A scholarship committee selects recipients from a list of applicants. The table shows the fields of study of the candidates who applied. So we have field of study, education, agricultural science, and engineering. The number of candidates in education is 37. The number of candidates in agricultural science is 30. And the number of candidates in engineering is 23. The committee selects 2 candidates at random. Calculate the probability that the first selected is in education. And so let's figure out the total number of candidates. And the total number of candidates is going to be 37 plus 30 plus 23. And that gives us 90. Next, what we have to do is we have to figure out the number of students, or the number of candidates, I should say, in education. And number of candidates in education is 37. And so the probability that the first selected is in education is going to be 37 over 90. And that's the answer to this question. Next, it says the committee selects 2 candidates at random. Calculate the probability that both are in engineering. And so what we have here is that we want to figure out the probability that both are in engineering. And so what is the probability that the first student selected is in engineering? And so there are 23 engineering students. And so that's why we have 23 here. And there are 90 students, or 90 candidates, I should say, not students, 90 candidates altogether. And so we have 23 over 90, because there are 23 candidates in engineering, and there are 90 candidates altogether. So that's why we have 23 over 90. Next, that's the probability of selecting the first student in engineering. Now, imagine that we already selected the first student in engineering. So remember, there are 2 students that we have to select, all right? And both of them must come from engineering. So when we select the first student, all right, from engineering, it's no longer going to be 23 students anymore in engineering. There's only going to be 22 students left to choose from, all right? Because you already selected the first one, and that was from engineering. So you got to take away 23 and 1, which gives us 22. But also it's no longer going to be 90 students to choose from the entire group, right? Because the total number of candidates is not going to be 90 anymore, because you already selected one. And so it's not going to be 90, it's going to be 89, all right? It's going to be 89. And so that's why we have that the probability of selecting the second student from engineering, with the understanding that the first student was also selected from engineering, the probability of selecting the second student from engineering, with the understanding that the first student was selected from engineering, is going to be 22, because there are 22 engineering students left, all over 89, because it's no longer 90 students, it's 89 students to choose from. And so now we multiply, we say 23 multiplied by 22, and 23 multiplied by 22 is 506. And then we have 90 multiplied by 89, and 90 multiplied by 89 is 8,010. And so the probability that both are in engineering is 506 divided by 8,010. Next, we want to calculate the probability that one student is an education student and the other student is an engineering student. Now it says the committee selects 2 students at random. So we want to figure out what is the probability that one student is an education student and the other student is an engineering student. Now this can happen in 2 ways. Well, we could have that the first student is an education student, and then the second student is an engineering student. Or we can have that the engineering student is selected first, and then the education student selected second. And so we're going to account for both ways. So if the education student is selected first, there are 37 education students, and there's going to be a total of 90 students to choose from. So it's 37 out of 90. But after that student is selected, it's not going to be 90 students to select from anymore. It's not going to be 90 anymore, because you already selected one student. It's going to be 89, all right? It's going to be 89 students, all right, to choose from. Okay, now, so there are 89 students to choose from, but it must come from engineering. So since the second student must be from engineering. There are 23 engineering students to choose from. And so it's going to be 23 all over 89. And so the probability of selecting the first one as education and the second one as engineering is 37 over 90 multiplied by 23 over 89. We multiplied 37 times 23 is 851, and 90 times 89 is 8,010. Next, we have to figure out the probability that the first student is in engineering and the second student is in education. And so what we do here is we say, okay, there are 90 students to choose from in total, all right? And there are 23 engineering students, so it's going to be 23 over 90. That's the probability that the first student selected is from engineering, 23 over 90. Now that we already selected the first student from engineering, we need to select the next student. But it's not going to be 90 students to choose from. No. It's going to be 89 students that we have to choose from because we already selected the first student, and that first student was from engineering. So we only have 89 students left to choose from. So that's why this denominator here is 89. But there are 37 education students. And so that's why we have 37 students here. And so it's going to be 37 all over 89. And so we multiply, we say 23 times 37 is 851, and 90 times 89 is 8,010. And so the probability that one student is an engineering student and the other is so the probability that one student is an education student, okay, they use the word student. Okay, so we could use the word student or candidate. That's good. So the probability that one student is an education student and the other is an engineering student. Again, the probability that one student is an education student and the other is an engineering student is going to be 851 all over 8,010 and 851 all over 8,010. We add them two together. And so we get 1,702. And for the denominator, we have 8,010. So the probability that one student is an education student and the other is an engineering student is 1,702 all over 8,010. And that's the answer to this particular question.